and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA on International Women's Day. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup. I was going to wish you a happy International Women's Day, but I guess we're doing that for each other.
Yes.
Sorry, just adjusting my chair.
And we do have certainly some women's news, but we're going to start off with a brilliant, inspiring speech in the Arkansas State Senate, where Democratic Senator Clarke Tucker tried to use reason to kill a heinous anti-trans bathroom bill.
And there were some other similar speeches in other states this week. We'll tell you about all of them. Meanwhile, of course, in Florida, the Republican attack on LGBTQ rights, free speech, reproductive rights, and democracy accelerates.
Former drag queen Bill Lee, the Republican governor of Tennessee, has signed a bill to criminalize drag performances.
Now, you notice how he slipped that in. Bill Lee does not self-identify as a former drag queen, but Andy has decided to categorize him that way. Hey. Kentucky Republicans have advanced a bill to curtail gender-affirming health care and ban drag where a kid might see it.
But LGBTQ activists and allies are fighting back in Iowa and Oklahoma and, of course, across the country.
Right, a lot of other states. Alaska gave, but now Alaska takes away LGBTQ rights protections.
Michigan's Democrat-led legislature advanced the bill to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Elections have consequences.
Yeah, that's the good news.
Yeah.
A non-discrimination bill. CPAC, just makes me laugh to even say it, starring Donald Trump, was even more of an anti-LGBTQ hate fest than usual.
George Santos is now officially under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for multiple crimes,
including evidently lying about having a pet fish. Texas Republicans, see, we're hopscotching the country today, condemn a Republican Congress member who voted to respect gay and interracial marriage.
The deaths of two gay men in New York, drugged to death leaving gay bars last year, have finally been ruled homicides.
And another little bit of good news, a transgender powerlifter in Minnesota has won her suit for the right to compete.
We mourn this week a longtime LGBTQ and leather activist in the United States, and in New Zealand, the first out transgender member of parliament anywhere in the world.
She was great. The new leader of the opposition in Italy is an out bisexual feminist woman.
And out actor Stephanie Hsu won at the Independent Spirit Awards and is nominated and will perform at the Oscars this Sunday.
We're so excited.
Well, I'm not excited about much, but I'm looking forward to seeing her.
Well, I've been looking forward to Michelle Yeoh, who's won a lot recently, but just got herself in a lot of trouble around the Oscars.
Oh, really? Well, maybe you better tell me.
Stay tuned, and I will.
Okay, so it is International Women's Day. And just to give you some more good news, civil rights activist Paulie Murray, the first Black Episcopal priest and a pioneer in the struggles for racial and gender equality, will be featured on U.S. quarters. Now, she had a marriage to a man briefly, and she had relationships with women. She's the co-founder of the National Organization for Women. And so a real pioneer. You may remember her from the film, the documentary, My Name is Paulie Murray. 15 years before Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus, she did it in Virginia.
With a friend. Paulie Murray was also a lawyer, and to read her Wikipedia, entry is to just be bowled over in awe with everything she did. She was a role model for and quoted by, in their judicial opinions, Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a friend of Eleanor Roosevelt. She knew everybody. She did everything. She was everywhere. She was out in her bisexuality long before most of the world. Paulie Murray, just incredible. The documentary, My Name is Paulie Murray, is available on Amazon Prime. You can still see it there. But just read her Wikipedia entry. It's shockingly.
And her sexuality sort of continues to be debated. It wasn't really settled in her lifetime, but she sort of said things that indicated basically that she was non-binary or trans. But we don't, again, by the way, the other people who are going to be honored with quarters in the new round are Patsy Mink, the first woman of color in Congress, Mary Edwards Walker, a Civil War surgeon and abolitionist, Zitkala Sa, a Native American activist, and Celia Cruz, the queen of salsa.
Celia Cruz.
Celia, thank you, Anne.
You're welcome. All right. Well, this week is another onslaught of attacks on the entire LGBTQ communities, but certainly trans people in particular, in state after state after state across the nation. The Republicans have decided this is their ticket to victory this year and next. I question that. They did very well with marriage 20 years ago, but...
Well, the polling, has been slipping on these issues for us as a result of this onslaught.
That's true. But it's also true that people are fighting back in numbers that we have never seen before. And so we're going to talk about all of that. And first of all, in Arkansas, there is a bill that has now passed a Senate committee and headed for the Senate. Has it passed the full Senate yet? Well, there's no question this bill is going to pass.
But it's been changed, and let's talk about how.
A little bit.
Well, so go ahead.
Well, the bill forbids people to go into restrooms that are designated contrary to their birth assigned gender, trans people, if there is a minor in the bathroom.
And this is defined as a sex crime.
Yes.
You get on the sex offender registry if you're in the stall and you're transgender and a child walks in, you're a sex offender.
Yes, you haven't even seen the child. You're not doing anything but using the restroom, but now you're a sex offender for being in the restroom. So, this is just heinous and unbelievable. So a Democratic state senator, Clarke Tucker, got up, and we're going to link to his speech in our weekly show note. This guy got up and gave the most eloquent 15-minute, closely reasoned speech about how this is about eliminating people, criminalizing being transgender, sending everybody off to prison, getting rid of trans people, because there is absolutely no way that anything defined in this bill could be seen as a crime or even inappropriate. It is just people using the restroom. And he says this is unbelievably horrible. And he just reasoned it out.
So he picked it apart so well that this Republican legislature, 29-6 Republicans in that state legislature now, they withdrew the bill for a few days.
Well, because he had pointed out things like, you're missing a sentence here, you've put the wrong words in here. How can you even consider a bill that is so illiterate?
They did change it a bit. The bill now says that the trans person may not knowingly remain if a minor is present. Well, but they've extended it not just to public facilities, but to private businesses and private facilities.
I can't imagine that this will pass judicial muster.
And the obsession with bathrooms, you can remember what happened in the fight over gays in the military. All they did is go into showers and restrooms. and act like, oh my God, you're going to have to share with the gays, and now it's share with the trans, and it's people are insane.
Well, they're certainly panicked.
I don't think they're panicked. They're just panicked about losing elections. They're not really panicked about this. Who is really panicked about being in the restroom this way? Where are the incidents where something horrible has happened?
You could count them on the fingers of one hand in the entire U.S. population. But mostly it's about straight guys trying to get into bathrooms to molest people. It's not about trans people.
Well, that's why Jon Stewart was so brilliant this week, taking on one of these legislators who's putting this bill in. And when the guy, who's being harmed by this, and he says, where's the real harm to kids? It's guns. And you are totally, everybody's probably seen this by now, but you're totally in favor of letting people have guns to commit massacres against children. And he was terrific in this, by the way. It was great.
Well, and similarly, a Black woman legislator in Kentucky got up and read the Riot Act to her fellow legislators who were passing a very similar bill and said, you say you care about kids. What about kids who are hungry? What about kids who are homeless? How about kids who are not in school? How about kids who are being beaten and abused? You don't care about kids. You just care about, profiting off this fear mongering.
And Missouri, it's out gay Republican legislator Phil Cristofanelli challenged his colleague Ann Kelly over her bill to ban discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. He asked her, who's Martha Washington? And she said, George's wife. And he said, well, could that be mentioned in the classroom? And she's, because you're basically alluding to her sexual orientation. She says, that's not sexual orientation. He says, really? So it's only really sexual orientations that you want prohibited from classrooms that should be prohibited. She asked, well, why don't you give me clearer language? He said, lady, and this is what I'm quoting, lady, it's your bill. I'm asking you what it means. And then she said, my moral compass is the Bible. So he said, in your testimony, you said you didn't want personal beliefs in the classroom, but you do seem to want your personal beliefs in every classroom. So is Martha Washington up for discussion or not? And she said, I don't know, sir.
Well, at least we have the satisfaction of twisting them into knots.
Well, one teacher testified at this hearing and said, look, I talk to my students about their sexuality every day, and I'm not going to stop. Arrest me.
Yeah, I like that. Well, when marriage was the topic, they used to say, why do you have to flaunt your relationships? And I would say, are you wearing a wedding ring?
Right.
They just are blind and ignorant and nasty.
Bringing me back, I remember when I was a copy boy at NBC, and I was out, and the guy said, why does anybody have to say what if they're gay? I said, you talk about your wife. Come on. You show picture. You got a picture on the desk. Give me a break.
It's the definition of a double standard, but it has not occurred to them, and I don't know if we've made it occur to them, but whatever.
Well.
So anyway, this is going on in state after state after state, and I am thrilled that these legislators are fighting back, are standing up, are speaking overtly without fear to combat the hate and the ignorance.
Well, we're getting killed in Florida. Governor DeSantis and his veto-proof majority Republican legislature, they're really on a tear against all the things that Ann talked about in the headlines. But before we give you the latest outrages, I want to second the call from a Washington Post columnist, Ken Blackstone. He says, look, at this point, all Major League Baseball teams should pull out of spring training in Florida. It would cost the state $687 million, 15 teams. He noted when the Brooklyn Dodgers brought Jackie Robinson in 1947 to break the color line, they had their spring training in Havana because in Florida, it was Jim Crow and it was not safe at all. Florida has three of the counties with the most lynchings at that time of any state, viciously racist state. Well, of course, you're not allowed to talk about that in Florida.
And pulling out is really the answer, because if you try to stay there and do something, Governor DeSantis, as he has proved with Disney, is not afraid to stand up and condemn corporations. So
well, they can leave, but they can leave. It's hard for Disney to leave. It's hard.
Right.
But baseball teams, within a couple of years, they could all get the hell out of there. And I think that given all the players of color and the attacks on race there by DeSantis, they ought to think about it. So the latest bills.
Well, I wanted to show just the hopeful moments around the country. In Iowa, thousands of people showed up at a rally to combat these bad bills, because they're in almost every state now, and that's one of them. And in Oklahoma, people flooded the Capitol with demonstrators and signs to object to the bills there. And there were similar demonstrations and rallies in Kentucky and Montana and Tennessee and all over the country. Kids are walking out of schools. So they may get a lot of these bills passed. They're all going to be challenged legally. The ACLU and Lambda and NCLR and others are all working on combating these bills in court. But the people are standing up and are fighting back and are exposing these bills for the hypocritical, cruel, horrible things they are.
Well, in Iowa, where the state Supreme Court lifted the ban on same-sex marriage in 2009, declared it unconstitutional.
Right.
But in the hopes that the Supreme Court there will nullify Obergefell, Republicans are pushing a constitutional amendment banning it that could go into effect. Their resolution says, in accordance with the laws of nature and nature's God, the state of Iowa recognizes the definition of marriage to be solemnized unions between one biological male and one biological female. And a second bill gives people the right not to acknowledge same-sex marriages on religious grounds and declares the Federal Respect for Marriage Act unconstitutional.
Well, take your pick, people. We can live in that kind of world, or we can live in a freer world, but it's up to us to fight back and do it.
So we go to the bad news?
Sure.
Well, Florida, they have a new bill that would let a parent kidnap their children across state lines if the parent believes that the child is receiving gender-affirming care, or even if the child is simply at risk for getting the care. That's the phrase they use. The bill blocks any public agency from spending money on gender-affirming care. So a transphobic parent could kidnap their child, abscond to Florida, and be protected, though guilty of felony kidnapping in their home state.
Well, we've seen individual cases like that in recent years. I remember a Texas case where there was a custody fight over a child who identified as trans, and the state wanted to take the child away from the mother and give that child to the father because the father objected to that kind of care for the child. And that's just laying the groundwork for now this much bigger movement.
But in the March to Fascism, it's not just LGBTQ rights that they're going after.
No.
They want to ban all diversity and equity programs at public universities, expand school vouchers to further undermine public education, allow a death sentence even if the jury is not unanimous, make it easier to sue the news media for libel, further restrict abortion. Now it's 15 weeks, they want to make it 6. A House bill would make discriminatory statements about someone's race, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation a category of protected speech.
This is all Florida he's talking about.
Yes, expand the Don't Say Gay to 8th grade, up to 8th grade. States that a person's sex is an immutable biological trait. And DeSantis has stacked the board of the Disney area with complete right-wing nuts, including one, a former pastor, Ron Perry, who believes that tap water could be making people gay.
Well, he also stacked the legislature by redistricting. He started on this a few years ago, making sure that the legislature was just a rubber stamp for any insane thing he wanted to propose.
He learned from Viktor Orban in Hungary. Now, Cyndi Lauper, our ally, weighed in and compared these anti-LGBTQ bills to Nazi Germany. This is how Hitler got started, she said, just weeding everybody out. And even Ken Burns said the bills resemble the Soviet system. So you got the Nazis and the commies. And
here's no verdict.
It's totalitarianism. They don't like democracy, so they do everything they can to damage it.
Well, the Bible is not about democracy, and that's their model.
Right.
In Texas,
democracy used to be condemned by the Vatican.
Well, there
democracy? You are. No.
Well, here's another wacko example. In Texas, a state representative has introduced a bill to lower property taxes. No, not that guy. We didn't give you a picture of this guy. He has introduced a bill to lower property taxes incrementally for straight married couples who have a lot of kids. You have one kid, your property taxes go down 10%. You have 4 kids, they go down 40%. 10 kids, 100%. And he says in the bill, first of all, you can't have been divorced. You can't be a single parent. You can't be a same-sex couple having kids or a single gay person. You must be a straight married couple. And he says in the bill that this is modeled on programs in Hungary and Poland.
All right.
All right.
Tennessee, as we tell you, is completely out of control. And the former drag performer, whether or not he's a drag queen now, Governor Bill Lee, signed the bill making adult cabaret or on public property or anywhere a child could see it a criminal offense. That includes topless go-go dancers, exotic dancers, strippers, or male or female impersonators. The word drag doesn't actually appear, but that's what they're after. Now, theater companies throughout the state are totally alarmed about this and are actually canceling shows that might run afoul of this law. Drag is basically banned, but the Titan cheerleaders can shake their booty on the field in front of the kids. It's showing a lot more skin. And the ACLU is sort of saying, let's look at how this is going to be enforced, but it's heinous.
Selectively. It will be enforced selectively.
Well, I was encouraged that Sheryl Crow, Maren Morris, Jason Isbell, the brothers Osborne, they're all going to do a concert for Tennessee LGBTQI groups on March 20th to support them in their hour of need.
Well, I don't think these companies should cancel their various productions. I think they should take the attitude of the whatever representative that was who said, arrest me. Go ahead with what you're doing.
That was a teacher, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So do that. Come on. By the way, Governor Lee's bill in Tennessee also bans medical care for trans youth under the age of 18. And the thing about that list of sexualized performers that slips in, impersonators at the end, that's to scare everybody up top with nudity and then slip in the drag version.
In Kentucky, they did advance that legislation to curtail gender-affirming care and a bill to ban adult performers within 1,000 feet of childcare facilities, schools, parks, homes, and places of worship. And when the problems with that were pointed out, they amended it to, this was considered a victory, to barring them from locations where the performance could be viewed by a child.
Are we taking TVs out of people's homes and computers?
Well, exactly. It's all over there. As RuPaul's Drag Race, the South, and I say this advisedly, they used to block out interracial programs all the time. In the South. Yep. They wouldn't carry them. I'm talking about the 60s into the 70s.
Yep. Julia, I think Diane Carroll's show was not run in some southern locales. Well, here's another little ray of sunshine. In Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu is going to appear with the Boston Gay Men's Chorus at their spring concert. She will be reading a banned children's book, A Peacock Among Pigeons, with the chorus before they perform a musical version of that.
Okay. And Arizona has a proposal to outlaw drag performers within a quarter mile of public playgrounds and schools.
All right, Arizona. Good news from Arizona. In Phoenix, the Washington Elementary School has had a contract with the Arizona Christian University to have the university supply student teachers to the public elementary school. They have now cut off that contract, the elementary school has, because they've read the value system declaration on the Christian University's website that says everyone must sign a pledge to God to support one man, one woman marriage only, blah, 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 blah. And the elementary school says, look, these teachers, student teachers from the Christian University may pledge that they will be respectful to all kids, but all it takes is one glance or one disapproving comment. We are not going to have anything to do with them. We're done with them.
And they said, look, we're not anti-Christian. There are plenty of Christian denominations that are totally embracing of gay people. Why should we work with a bigoted Christian denomination?
Yep.
You know?
All right. In Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene has a bill that's being debated this week that makes doctors felons for providing health care to trans minors. And the House Education and Workforce Committee will debate a bill this week proposing a national ban on trans kids participating in sports. They want to redefine Title IX's prohibition on sex discrimination to make it apply only to reproductive biology and genetics at birth. This is to wipe out the Bostock decision, which said that trans people were covered under, LGBTQ people were covered under sex discrimination laws, and the Congress now wants to wipe that out.
Well, you'd think we'd be safe with the Democratic Senate, but President Biden has withdrawn the nomination of Gigi Sohn to serve as commissioner of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, leaving them in a 2-2 split. She was opposed by all Republicans and Joe Manchin, who said she held partisan alliances with far left groups. She would have been the first out LGBTQ commissioner at the FCC. Conservative groups spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads attacking her across the country because their objective is they want to end net neutrality and hurt consumer protection.
This is totally a move by corporations that do not want to operate at all in the interests of the consumers. And they have succeeded in buying congressional allies and killing her nomination.
Don't they know how much they're starting to sound like the people at the CPAC hate fest? Everybody.
Go there. We've skipped over a few other things.
I have other state stuff, but you went to national, so that's
just because it was the same subject.
Okay. We want to go back to the states? Let's go back to the states.
Okay. Well, let's go back to, in anticipation of CPAC, Fox News, which I'm happy to see is in trouble this week. But some of our Rise and Resist activist colleagues here in New York, you ask what you can do. Well, you can do what they did. They went into the Hannity show, got themselves into the audience and got up and screamed at Hannity. Let's look.
About the Dominion lawsuit. You have a coup planner here. Someone involved in the coup. Why aren't you talking about?
Good for them.
Yes.
I believe you have a little history of this yourself.
Yeah. Well, you've seen me thrown out of a few Barnes and Nobles, too, yelling at Democratic senators who voted for the Defense of Marriage Act.
Well, I had to yell at Geraldo once while doing his show, and I had to yell at, and of course, I had a huge fight with
what's his name, who slapped you?
Morton Downey.
Yeah. Yes. The point is that all it takes is a couple of people to go yell at one of these criminals, and they use
Morton Downey Jr. His father was a great Irish singer.
Well, all right. Hannity is not.
No. Okay. West Virginia appealed that ruling that Medicaid has to cover trans health care. So this was argued before the Court of Appeals, the Fourth Circuit this week. Lambda Legal Defense defended the district court ruling, which was a good one. In Idaho, we've told you about how Republican governors are stacking university boards with extremists, right-wing extremists. But in Idaho, you get to run for the local board of trustees for the school. So all these right-wingers got elected to the community college board there and denouncing liberal indoctrination. But they're so extreme that the school debt was downgraded by Moody's, and they're being threatened with loss of accreditation. So, they had gotten rid of the college president whose wife supported Hillary Clinton and installed the wrestling coach as the president. So business leaders are getting alarmed and saying, take it easy, and they're now funding opponents to the crazies.
In Idaho. Nice. In Texas, the Republican Party there has censured one of their own. Yes, that's where this guy comes up. Representative Tony Gonzalez. He's a member of Congress. And in Congress, he has cast some votes that are regarded as, he voted for the Fairness for Marriage Act or whatever that was. And he voted for some gun control measure. And he voted for some bill that was slightly pro-immigrant. And now his own party in his own state has attacked him and censured him. And I suspect will not be supporting him for re-election. They will find a crazy from Idaho, perhaps, to run against him.
All right. In Texas, Representative Nate Schatzline, who led the charge for an anti-drag bill there in Texas, we have a picture of him, and his alter ego was exposed in a video for doing drag. I mean, these people have absolutely no shame. They engage in this kind of stuff. Oh, this is different for some reason. But do we get to say it's different? Do we get to say it's not sexualized or whatever? This is what he's doing. There he is, running along the street in a dress.
It's just a complete double standard, and they do not even understand it. What they think they're criminalizing is something completely different. But in fact, this is what they're criminalizing too.
Well, we don't put up with this. There he is. Horror show.
Yeah.
We don't put up with this in New York City anyway. We have a council member named Vicky Palladino. She's a big MAGA person, and she's made some horribly anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-drag positions. There she is. Just look at her. So
isn't that me with that hair? No.
No, she's a horror show. She's festooned with all kinds of white supremacist Christian symbols. Anyway, she said so many horrible things that they got her off the mental health committee. She's being allowed to keep some committees, but they have disciplined her for her bigotry.
And she's gone after specifically drag story hour performances in her district and all over New York. She really is unbelievably horrible. And they finally took some action against her. And you think, New York City full of liberals? No, absolutely not. No.
Never. New York has never been particularly liberal. You forget that Rudy Giuliani, Ed Koch, and Mike Bloomberg were our mayors.
Well, do we give Mayor Adams credit?
Oh, he's part of that. He's part of that. He was the most conservative Democratic candidate. Yes.
Well, he did this last weekend go out to Staten Island to stand up with the LGBT protesters against the Staten Island St. Patrick's Day parade, which excludes, and I mean really virulently excludes gay people.
Even the Republicans out in Staten Island are embarrassed by that. Yeah. I went to the St. Pat's for All in Queens. I had a wonderful time. It was I posted some pictures on Facebook about that. You can check it out. But it's a great thing. But the mayor all week was trying to defend his get rid of the separation of church and state. He would say, no, it's one thing, state is the body, God is the mind. I don't know, whatever he's saying. But then he goes on to say, but religion shouldn't interfere with government and government shouldn't interfere with religion. Well, that's just a line they gave him, but he won't back down.
Well, he also won't back down from defending the strategic response group in the NY Police Department, which was supposed to show up for the third time at a city council hearing about its violence. It beats up protesters. We at Reclaim Pride with the Queer Liberation March have run into them several times. They just come and, for no reason at all, just suddenly attack the end of the march with batons and pepper spray and arrest people and are completely out of control. So the city council's been trying to hold hearings on this. They won't show up at the hearings. The hearing's been rescheduled 3 times. They still haven't shown up. And they say, well, you know, all of this is under investigation, so we can't show up to testify.
The anti-terrorism unit does not belong at demonstrations. Police, their job is supposed to be to facilitate First Amendment expression, not to stop it. And, you know, our old friend Rosie Mendez, an out lesbian city council member, had a bill in there for 10 years that never went anywhere. And I'm asking that they revive it. That's the job of the police, not anti-terror.
And these are spontaneous attacks by the police on demonstrators.
Yes.
And there is endless video of this.
It cost the city millions of dollars. They had to pay everybody off. Hundreds and hundreds of people had to be given settlements because of the way they treated them.
And yet, like every other mayor here, which is scared of these violent cops, Mayor Adams has supported them and said, oh, no, they don't have to show up to testify.
I believe he used to be a police officer.
He did. And he was a dissenter police officer.
In those days.
Yeah.
All right, let's go all the way across the country to Alaska. You know, after the Bostock decision of the Supreme Court, they affirmed that, which said that employment is protected in sexual orientation and gender identity. They said, we will too, and we'll cover it in housing and government practices and finance and public accommodations. But now we've learned that the state's Human Rights Commission reversed that policy and will only cover employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And they dropped the LGBTQ cases that they were working on. And that's cold, even for Alaska. The change was requested by a right-wing Christian group, and the current commission chair questions the validity of trans identity.
And they announced this policy change on a website with 31 followers. What can I say? In Missouri, here's a good story. We've been hearing for the last few weeks about charges by dissident that the Washington University Transgender Center was inappropriately forcing kids into puberty blockers, hormones, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Shocking story, which was put out by a right-wing publication and
written by a woman who identified as queer
and married to a trans man, but defended or supported in all this by the Alliance Defending Freedom and other right-wing legal groups. Well, now finally, parents of the kids who go to this center have stood up and said, we don't know what the heck you're talking about. We've had no problems with this place. All our kids are happy. This has been a great boon in our lives. And this is outrageous. This is a clear outlier, and there is no evidence of anything going wrong at this place.
And we'll give you some more good news. Michigan now in the hands of Democrats in the legislature and the state house. The Senate passed a bill adding sexual orientation to their state anti-discrimination law. The bill returns to the House. Of course, it'll pass. 21 states in the District of Columbia have these protections, many cities, including in red states. And all are protected by the Bostock, all of you are protected by the Bostock decision in most employment. They're also working on getting the ban on same-sex marriage out of the state constitution, but that's a longer process.
So I did dip into watching CPAC off and on this weekend, including, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You watched all of Trump's speech. I only watched.
I did, but I want to say one thing before we get to Trump's speech. They had a group of anti-trans activists speak at one point, a gaggle of 4 or 5 of them, including this poor young woman, Chloe Cole, I think. Hold on, let me get that. Who is making the rounds as a detransitioner. She has sued the Kaiser Health system in California for, she says, forcing her into medical treatment. So she's there front and center at CPAC, telling her story, being exploited again by the right wing. But yes, I watched all of Trump's speech because I want to keep my eye on him. Look, I had pretty much written him off for 2024, but I'm not writing him off.
Oh no, likely the nominee.
Well, certainly it looks like it at this point. Outpolling.
And the Electoral College is worse for us now because of redistribution of electors. Yeah,
it's scary, but we have beaten him time after time. I must say, I enjoyed Joe Scarborough every morning talking about all the elections the Republicans have lost over the last 10 or 15 years. And he just lists them, Trump didn't get the majority of the vote in 2016. They lost in 2018. They lost in 2020. They lost in 2022. And it just goes down the list.
But in this country, you can still win even if you lose the vote.
Yes, but but people have come out ever since Trump won in 2016. The people have been aroused to come out and vote, and that has been very heartening and very useful over the last 10 years.
Right.
So I haven't given up on our ability to beat him, but I am, and I hate DeSantis so much. He really scares me. In some ways more than Trump. So I'm perfectly happy to have him low in the polls. But Trump has a really high chance of being nominated.
And, one of the most egregious statements at the CPAC was Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire, right-wing site. Transgenderism must be eradicated entirely, a genocidal statement, which he denies that he wants to kill them all. But what the hell does that mean?
And now he's speaking at the University of Buffalo, and the students tried to stop it. And the president said, free speech. I can't cancel him.
Well, I mean, they don't have to sponsor him, but if it's scheduled, and we can get into these fights about, do you let it go? You protest it.
Yes, you do protest it, but you also understand that someone who is given the speaker's podium and the stage has power over the people they're talking to. And to suggest that the students have equal power is, I think, inappropriate. Trump, meanwhile, the biggest applause he got in his almost 2-hour speech was when he talked about, stopping child mutilation and no men in sports.
Well,
Trump aside, that was the biggest applause line. Now, CPAC has shrunk. It is definitely a minor group, but that's what's getting the applause.
So they had a serial rapist at the convention run by an accused sexual molester.
Okay.
So, all right. And a lot of people didn't show up as a result of that. Anyway, George Santos, so the House Ethics Committee has finally commenced its investigation into the serial liar, grifter, thief, and all-around disgrace to his office. But there were so many charges that they had to form a special subcommittee just for him. And his Republican colleagues from New York are pushing a new bill, the No Fortune for Fraud Act, to prevent him from profiting from any TV or book deals.
Oh, now they do that. And they do it with him. How about Trump's books? Anyway, they're going after him for violating campaign finance laws, for conflict of interest charges, charges of sexual misconduct. And then there's that missing fish.
All right. Well, here's some more good news. In Minnesota, the trans power lifter, J.C. Cooper, won her discrimination suit versus USA Powerlifting that banned her and other trans people from competing. Said it's a violation of the Minnesota human rights law. The judge ordered USA Powerlifting to submit revised participation policies in 2 weeks. Now, JC may be entitled to financial damages. The Powerlifting Federation and the Olympics do allow trans athletes to compete.
Really, it's about sorting out what the real facts are. You can't just make blanket rules or condemnations of people for who they are. You have to prove it and come up with some sensible policies, which the Olympics and other sports federations have somewhat logically managed to do. There are some arguments still, but that's how they're approaching it.
In New York, the medical examiner has finally ruled the deaths of Julio Ramirez and John Umberger, 2 gay men who were drugged, robbed, and killed by predators as they left gay bars in Manhattan, as homicides. They were originally attributed to drug overdoses, but they were fed the drugs by these guys, a lethal cocktail of phenytoin, p-fluorophenyl, cocaine, lidocaine, and ethanol. Heroin was also found in Ramirez's system. He didn't take it knowingly. They slip it into your drink, whatever. So these deaths and others, including of non-gay people, have really raised the alarm about nightlife in New York. So don't leave your drink unattended. Don't take a drink from a stranger. No candies from strangers. And,
and maybe go places with friends and stick with your friends and don't leave bars alone.
They're supplying phenytoin strips to bars so that people can test their drinks. And they're conducting LGBTQ sensitivity training with the cops over this because they hadn't.
Still.
One perp has been arrested, not in this case, but for 2 other murders in December. All right.
Do we want to discuss the Rainbow Reload group in New Hampshire that's training LGBTQ people on using firearms?
Well, I don't know what to discuss it, but they want people to be able to defend themselves because of all the attacks on drag shows and gay bars.
Proud Boys, neo-Nazis, all of that.
Finn Smith, the group's organizer, said, "If the world is dangerous, you have to be dangerous back. I do not intend to start packing myself, but..."
No, me either.
Let's go to Hollywood.
In Hollywood, 30 years ago, Billy London, a porn star, was murdered, and they found parts of him in his head and his feet in a dumpster. He was 25 years old when he was killed, but they never found the killer. Well, people have worked on this case over the years, but now a couple of amateur investigators, including Rachel Mason, the director of the Circus of Books documentary, and a guy named Clarke Williams, have solved the case. The killer is a guy who's in jail at the moment. Actually, not a guy, a trans woman now, Darylyn Madden. Was a skinhead killer at the time in 1990, went to prison after killing several people and transitioned and has now been confessed to killing Billy London. And Rachel Mason, the documentary director, is making a new documentary about this case.
Okay. All right, some people that we've lost, somebody we lost this week, a really veteran gay activist, Bruce Michael Gelbert, a longtime gay and leather activist. This is the way Bruce Michael used to walk around the street most of the time. He's died at the age of 71. His activism goes back to the Gay Activist Alliance shortly after Stonewall. He was a leader of the Christopher Street Liberation Day Committee in the early days. He was also a news photographer for the New York Native, Fire Island News, Leather Journal. He also reviewed opera and theater for a bunch of sites. This is where he won Mr. Fire Island Leather in 2001. And he is survived by his husband, Joseph Saporito. I knew him back in the day, terrific guy.
And gone too soon, not that old. All right, international news.
Yes.
And we've spent so much time on the States, we should start zipping along.
We'll get through Italy's center-left party, which lost big to the fascist party this year, to Giorgia Meloni, has selected as their new leader out bisexual Ellie Schlein, 37 years old. She's been compared to AOC, a feminist leftist, passionately pro-European. Great story. Read up on her. It's a breakthrough.
She is Swiss and U.S. and Italian. She worked on the Obama campaigns when she was here. She's a lawyer. She has a girlfriend.
I have loved many men and I have loved many women, she said.
Progressive environmentalist.
Not in a relationship with a woman. All right, very sad news from New Zealand, someone we've talked about for many, many times over the years. Trailblazing trans lawmaker Georgina Beyer, who in 1999 became the world's first openly trans member of a parliament. She died Monday at the age of 65 in hospice care. She was considered a national treasure, a Tawanga in the Maori language. Beyer was Maori, worked as a sex worker and nightclub performer before entering politics in 95 as the mayor of a small town, and became a Labor MP in 1999. Real trailblazer in the world.
She helped pass decriminalization of sex work, helped pass same-sex civil unions in 2004, and was described as brave and gracious. In Namibia, they're debating a marriage case in the Supreme Court there. They rejected marriages 20 years ago. A couple of couples have brought a new case. There was a rally outside the Supreme Court, but the court is currently relying on that case 20 years ago, before marriage was really legalized almost anywhere. So the activists are trying to get the court to see the world has changed. But in Panama, the Supreme Court of Justice has rejected same-sex marriage, even though they've been ordered to legalize it by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights 6 years ago.
20 nations were ordered to. They haven't all done it.
The court in Panama said same-sex marriage is not a human or fundamental right. It lacks conventional and constitutional recognition, so we're not going to do it.
All right.
Say that last part. Just want to say that this week in Burundi, 24 LGBTQ people were arrested. The president says that the country should curse those who indulge in homosexuality because God cannot bear it. I'm always curious about how they know what God thinks. All right, entertainment.
Two so-called liberal states, New York and California, are trying to save money by transitioning their Medicaid drug program from managed care to fee-for-service now that the federal 340B drug pricing program that serves low-income patients is about to be stripped of its funding. This is alarming because it's going to hurt service. It's going to limit the access to drugs for people with HIV. It's going to limit funding for these agencies like Callan Lord and all these agencies that serve us. They already did it in California. It's going to go into effect April 1st in New York if we don't stop it. And the health commissioner of the city said, don't do this.
And they're already running into horrible red tape problems and delays and lack of access. It's a bad thing. All right, I think we better move on to entertainment news. We're all waiting for the Oscars this weekend, but the Independent Spirit Awards were this last weekend. And out Stephanie Hsu from Everything Everywhere All the Time won the best breakthrough performance. And she ran up to the stage barefoot, carrying her shoes. Michelle Yeoh won Best Lead Performance after also winning at the Screen Actors Guild and Golden Globes. But now she's in trouble because she retweeted something from Vogue that said, Cate Blanchett has won enough Oscars. It's time for Michelle Yeoh.
Well, she's not shy.
That's illegal from the Oscars. So now they're waiting. You're not allowed to comment on any other nominee. So we'll see what happens to Michelle Yeoh.
You're going to win, Michelle. Take it easy.
Exactly.
No, she said it because the voting is closed.
Well, she said it one day before the voting closed, so this could be a real scandal. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed won Best Documentary, and a Pakistani film won Best International Film about a young male dancer who becomes obsessed with the trans woman leading the troupe. That's a Pakistani film at the Independent Spirit Awards.
Stephanie Hsu is also up for Oscar this Sunday, March 12th.
They all are, yeah.
What?
They all are.
Well, but she's going to join David Byrne and Sun Lux to perform the nominated song, This Is a Life, from Everything Everywhere All at Once. She told Michael Musto that the film is helping people come out to their parents.
Well, we told you last week about the production auction, the A24 company of items from Everything Everywhere to benefit the Trans Law Center, laundry workers, and Asian mental health. They raised over $500,000 from the auction, and the highest rated, most expensive item was Rakakuni from Everything Everywhere All at Once, brought $90,000.
No. So, no, Sally Field didn't mention her gay son, Sam Greisman, when picking up her SAG Lifetime Achievement Award last week. But he was watching, and he tweeted, not able to attend the SAG Awards, not able to try and flirt with Andrew Garfield, who presented the award to his mother. Please pray for me in my pain. And when Austin Butler helped his mother to the stage, he wrote, she picked up another hottie.
The Real Housewives of Orange County, more progressive steps. The Heather and Terry Dubrow couple, who are not appealing, have now announced that in addition to their daughter who came out as bisexual, her other daughter who came out as lesbian, now their youngest child has come out as a trans male at 12. The Dubrow family covering all the bases. They also have a straight son.
Also covering all the bases, actor, comedian, and candidate for the United Kingdom Parliament, Eddie Izzard, will now go by the name Susie Eddie Izzard. People can call her Susie or Eddie, and she prefers feminine pronouns but doesn't mind male pronouns, and says she's wanted to be Susie since she was 10 years old. And she's lost Parliament 3 times. She vows to win this time. I am a relentless bastard, he, she, they said.
And if you want to see something really smarmy, the 3-part documentary on ID and Discovery Plus of Jared from Subway and all his sexual predation of young children is really going to make you feel filthy.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Oh, we got 30 seconds or 28 seconds. Something.
Enjoy the Oscars this weekend. Marin Johns will be here in this seat next week as I take a week off, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, and Andy will be here next week.
It's been good to be with you. Happy International Women's Day.
Exactly. Bye.